It's important to never try to be somebody other than yourself. Obviously, you can look at things from other players and be like, okay, I want to try to incorporate that into my game. But we all have abilities that are just different from everyone else on the field. My biggest piece of advice is don't ever try to be anybody other than yourself. Understand that your skill sets and what you can bring to the table are different from others, and it can bring a lot more value than you really think.
Welcome to the Let Me Save You 25 Years podcast. Today, we have a monster celeb, an amazing talent. Come on. Before we get going, please give me a follow, a share it out to your friends, give it a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening on. I know it can be hard to find the reviews, but it means so much to me. I don't do advertising. My platform does some advertising, but I just do this to put out great content and bring you people like the quarterback of the New York Giants, Mr. Jaxson Dart today. It's going to be so cool. But to set this up, I wanted to ask Jaxson to comment on a Shawnism that I hold really personally, because it's one of those few concepts that you learn along the way and you write it down in your morning mantra below that. I have a few things, like key learnings, and I only have, I don't know, a dozen of them. And one of those I stole. I don't even know where I got it at this point. Use we instead of I. Yeah, and what this means is adjust your language in any leadership capacity. Could be in your local church, could be in school, could be, of course, in your job. I get to be the CEO of a company with lots of people that work here. And I try very hard to not say I whenever I can, especially around anything good, any form of imagine, by the way, if I had an idea for a product or whatever, I try very hard not to say it's my idea, it's our idea. This was, we knocked it out of the park with this new thing. Even, by the way, if it was my idea, because leaders get so much credit anyway, and forget whether you're the leader or not. Listen, people that know what they're doing, people that are not completely out to lunch, they know who's contributing. They know who's smart. They know who comes up with ideas. You don't need to claim it. And in fact, by claiming it, it will always run the risk of rubbing someone the wrong way versus getting people behind you. So just change your language. Any chance you get, use we. We did this. We achieved that. Couldn't believe it when we blah, blah, blah. Even if it was an I thing. And except for, and here's the exception, when something goes wrong. Anytime anything goes wrong, you switch to I. Even if it wasn't your fault. Because, by the way, again, great people who are paying attention and aren't out to lunch, which are the only ones that matter anyway. Because if they're not paying attention, then they're out to lunch, or they're not emotionally mature, don't worry about them anyway. Their opinions don't matter the same way. Anyone who's anyone knows what really happened, knows when it's not your fault, and just will level up their respect for you by tenfold if you can own the negative things. I'm sorry I let this happen. What could I have done to prevent this from happening? Again, even if it's not your fault, try to own all the things with an I. So use we instead of I when things are good. Use I when things are tough. This is an opportunity that I have every day in my own family, with my kids, my wife, of course, in business and leadership. And I'm not perfect at it. And I gratuitously, enjoy taking credit for all kinds of stuff that I probably don't even deserve, because I'm the CEO, I'm the Lovesac guy, I get credit for a lot of things. But I really challenge myself to develop the ability to use we instead of I. And today on the podcast, we have the quarterback for the New York Giants to unpack this with us, for us. 21-year-old rookie that Whether he's ready to write a book on leadership, I will tell you that someone in his position has had so much implicit and explicit energy and training and coaching poured into him to allow him to do what he does in one of the highest pressure arenas on planet Earth. It's pretty cool. You're going to hear from him directly on this podcast right now. Let's go. Today's guest knows a thing or two about leading a team when the lights are brightest and the stakes are the highest. He went from being one of the top quarterbacks in actually high school and then college football, now stepping into the NFL as quarterback for the New York Giants. But beyond the highlight reels and the big arm throws, what makes this man stand out is his mindset, his belief in the power of we over I. Look, football is kind of an awesome proxy for business and for life. Every play is a lesson in trust, accountability, and ownership. You've got to give credit to your teammates when things go right and then step up and say, I, and own it when something goes wrong. That's what we're talking about today. We have one of the most famous NFLers on the planet at this point in his rookie season, a Lovesack owner, consummate winner, to help us unpack the Shawnism of the week. Use we instead of I. Please welcome to the pod quarterback for the New York Giants, Mr. Jaxson Dart.
Let's go. This is awesome. Can't wait. Thanks for having me. Excited for this.
Heck yeah, man. All right. So without even thinking too hard, Jaxson, when you heard this idea, use we instead of I as we speak, as we lead, whatever. What's the first thing that came to mind for you?
I think the first thing is it's very fitting, to the position that I'm in as a quarterback of a team and just the sport that I play. I mean, like when you think about like the ultimate team sport, when there's so many variables involved in success and winning and losing. Football's I would say like one of the most perfect examples of um, a we over I mindset and, kind of how it matters, each and every Sunday that you perform with your team. You can go out there on the field, and if one part of, the offensive unit, defensive unit, special teams of unit, isn't clicking, it can ultimately end up in a loss. And it doesn't matter how good one person plays or just a single individual plays. It matters as the whole landscape. So I think that it's a great example of it. And I think just as the quarterback, you always have to have that, on your mind of trying to lead the team and making sure that everybody's mindset is the same and, try to just create a very connected unit, a very connected team, where it's not just about one person, not about just one individual. It's about, all of us and us being on the same page and really just buying into, the culture of winning.
Well, so cool to hear from a quarterback. Look, a quarterback is now, I don't think most people even hear it all the time as a position in football. I mean, it's like, look, I'm going to quarterback this. It's used in business. It's used in everyday conversation. And listening to what you just said, I don't think most people can even appreciate the amount of, who knows, energy, coaching, studying that it's taken people in your position to develop the leadership skills and the team building skills and the language skills and all the other stuff that goes into being a quarterback beyond like throwing the football
Right.
and making good decisions. I mean, is that fair? Like what, maybe unpack that for us a little bit, because I believe that it's probably way more intense than people understand looking from the outside in.
Yeah, I think that, kind of when you look from the outside in, I mean, I did it when I was younger. You just see 18 weeks of an NFL football season, and you see 17 games, and kind of what all goes into that is not shown. I mean, maybe you see it a little bit more on like Hard Knocks or different documentaries that come out like on Netflix or whatever it may be about people kind of showing more of the backstory of how much really goes into it, but I think that it starts like it's a year round process and trying to create a culture with 53 guys and you have to all be on the exact same page over everything.
Hmm.
And you only have so many opportunities to, let that shine on a national landscape. So, from a schedule standpoint, I mean, I'm waking up 5:30, getting there at 6, and then most of the times you're not leaving until 8:30. So it's an all day preparation thing of, what can I do to be prepared? And I think the quarterback is just a unique role because you have to look out for everybody around you. And so there's a lot of time, there's a lot of thought that goes into, not even just the schematics of the game, the install process of each week of preparing for a new team. When you get done with the game, you feel like you got out of a car accident and you have to take care of
Yeah,
your body, but you're
seriously.
constantly just like thinking of like the guys and what's needed at this moment for the team to be successful. So you're constantly like reaching your hand out for people and just trying to just elevate, even if it's just 1% of everybody around you. And I think that when you look at, the greatest athletes, you look at the greatest businesses, the greatest organizations, corporations, it all comes down to the culture, and that there was, some substantial leaders in those who really extended their hand and gave up, a lot of themselves to, just try to raise the bar for everybody around them. So there's definitely a lot that goes into it for sure.
So actually, I'm curious, Jaxson. When I think of you parachuting into the NFL, you're 21 years old. You're with all these veterans, surrounded by crazy successful people, big people, powerful personalities, millionaires, all of them. How do you build relationships? Besides the obvious, I don't know, be a generally cool guy. Like, are there things that you do in your role that have worked for you already to try and actively build those relationships?
Yeah, I think the first thing is I try to always be the first one in the building.
Hmm.
So, anytime I'm there, I'm able to see, who comes in next. And then, those are easy conversations to start. And then I try to be the last one to leave too. So, whether it's just spending extra time in the film room or even just around the locker room and just going around talking to guys, that's definitely helped. And then you try to find time, like, you know when's a good day for, to take like the offensive line out to go eat, or the wide receiver room to, just hang out or just have little events,
Hmm.
which is nice in New York because there's a lot of things going on. So, maybe a group of us will go to a concert and just spend time that way. But you definitely just try to schedule those things and just find time in your schedule so you can get that time and have those conversations. I thought it was really nice. We took a trip, out to San Diego, with Russell and all the wide receivers, all the tight ends, all the running backs, and Jameis as well. And we went to the Padres game, and we were able to train in the mornings, then go out and eat and hang out, later in the evening. So those things in the off season definitely help.
That's awesome. I love to hear you. Here you are, a celebrity, a famous quarterback, doing your thing, New York City, but you're willing to be the first in the building, the last to leave. You're willing to. Yeah, it'd be easy, I think, for someone in your position or even one like it. Not even a quarterback per se, a leader of any kind, to be the last in, to be wearing your sunglasses when you show up late and people kind of expected to roll out the red carpet for you, but that's not the style of leadership that you've found works, obviously. And I think there's something for all of us to learn from that. That's awesome. I watched one of your post game interviews. Um, I think just from uh, the last game, which of course had some pretty tough moments in it, and I love that you owned it, and I want to know if you were trained to do that, if you just learned that over the years of naturally being in sports at a high level all the way back, where you said, look, at the end of the day, I needed to play better. You said you called out some different things, but then you ended with that. And that's where the use of I is a big part of this equation that we're talking about, using we over I, using we most of the time for almost everything you could possibly use we for.
Right.
But I, when we got to own something, maybe even negative, where does that come from for you?
Um, well, I think that it's just come from, obviously, I think it definitely helped how, my parents raised me and, kind of the qualities that I saw in them and, how my dad was in his business and, my mom, just around the house, always with us. And they were just great examples to me, early on. And, just having conversations with them, about leadership. Because, for me, like, I've never sat on the bench before. My freshman year of high school,
Mm,
I was starting in high school football. When I got to USC, my freshman year of college, I was starting. So, there's a lot of conversations that were needed to have for me because I was just trying to figure it out, and as the quarterback, like you're always going to be the face of, your team.
yeah.
And you have to be the leader, and I think that that's just kind of the given role, fair or unfair, of if you're ready or not ready. You kind of just have to, put that face on, put that accountability on. And so I think that it's really important in those moments to, you want to reflect on the good things and you want to be encouraging about, the game, or you want to be encouraging about, the guys on the team. But at the same time, like, when things aren't going your way or when there's adversity, you have to be able to identify those things, address those things, talk through them. And but it will always fall back on the leader. And I think that, as the quarterback, when you look at the greatest of all time, regardless of what their record was, like, the quarterbacks, how you're judged is based off of winning and losing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter, what happened in the game. If you, played a great game, but you made one mistake and you still lost, or whatever it may be, like, the winning and losing still falls back on the leaders. So I think that it's very important when you're in that role to take accountability of your mistakes and, get better from those things, and also let the guys around you know that, you understand, what you can do better for them. And, I think when you're able to identify those things, then everybody around you knows that, you're not going to make those same mistakes again.
That's cool, man. I think there's great power in hearing you talk about how you're aware that you're the face of the team, whether it's fair or not, whether it's right, whether it's, it's super unique. It's a unique sport. It's a unique position. But with that, you're always going to be given so much credit when things go right, whether it was your fault or not that it
All
went
right.
right. And I think that. And I think leaders need to know that, because it's otherwise, the natural, you know, the natural man in us, the human in us, will want to take credit and expect to like be recognized, when we can use a little discipline and try to give it all away with the we, like we did this and we, like, even if you threw a touchdown pass, it's we scored a touchdown, versus I
Right.
threw it, right? Because by giving it all away, it's so much more enrolling for everyone around you as a leader, right? Than to claim it, because you're going to get it handed to you anyway.
Yeah, 100%. I think that when you look at, when you score a touchdown, when you throw a touchdown, there's so many different parts, like you said, about that play. It's not just me throwing the ball; it's the offensive line protecting it. It's the running back picking up an extra blitzer and pass protection that you could be hot off of, and then the guys, winning one-on-one matchups down the field. And, those, like, credit goes far beyond just one person in those moments. And like you said, it's definitely important to, shout those things out, to those guys. And I think another thing that, I kind of like to hit on when I talk about this is, like, as a leader, you can never be scared of, making a mistake.
Hmm.
And I think that at times people struggle with that because, you don't want to fail, and you put in all this time, all this effort, you just don't want to fail. But in all reality, like, you're not going to give it everything you got if you're scared or have things in the back of your mind. You got to be able to go out there and leave it all on the field.
That's awesome, man. I have to ask, in recently, one of your main targets, maybe your main target, had a horrific injury in the game. Obviously,
Yep.
a bummer to see Scatterbo go down. It had to be like, speaking of not being scared, what's that moment like for you where you have to go back to the huddle and just press on when one of your friends, let alone one of your key, uh, weapons, is now out of the game? And what's that like, and what does that feel like, and what do you say to get your team, I don't know, focused on the next play?
Yeah, those are definitely moments that you don't really prepare for because you don't ever want to have those in the back of your mind. And like you said, when it comes to a teammate who's not only very impactful on the field, but also one of your, best friends off the field, it's emotional. You see him go down, especially like
Yeah.
his injury when, the whole world could kind of see the impact of it and how serious it was. It was definitely emotional. But I thought that it was really cool, because he's another great example of a leader. And when he got on the cart, a lot of guys, like, you'll see they're like demoralized, and which I'm sure he was deep down inside. I know he was deep down inside, but when we all came up to talk to him, like, he was encouraging every single one of us, to press on, to lock into our details, into our training, to do whatever it would take to win the game. And I think that when we all came around him and saw that, then it kind of, you know, pushed our focus more onto, like, all right, let's go win it for him. Like, let's go, lock into the little details. And, when we got back into the huddle, it kind of helped us just come together because, for him just to be in that moment and then think of the guys around him, I thought was very unique.
Cool. Well, look, I need you to give a quick shout out to my nephew, Ben Tricoupas, who's just up the road from you in Greenwich, Connecticut, and offer him one piece of advice. He's the captain, he's the quarterback on his team. You are his idol. What's the one piece of advice you could give someone to shave a chunk off of his journey toward where you are?
Mm, one piece of advice. Well, first, shout out to Ben. Um, if I had to give one piece of advice, I think it would be, this might be a little long-winded, but I think football is a very unique sport in that it can come to all shapes and sizes, and you see guys at many different positions where they have different skill sets which separate them from other guys in their same position. Um, but I think that, what's special about this sport is when you're able to identify something that you have that separates yourself, whether it's a physical ability, a leadership ability, you can always find value in that, and it can bring value to a team and separate the whole team. And, what I found is it's important to never try to be somebody other than yourself. Obviously, you can look at things from other players and be like, okay, I want to try to incorporate that into my game, but we all have abilities that are just different from everyone else on the field. And I think that when you are able to hone in on that and, try to bring value in whatever situation, whatever the team needs, that can really separate a team, because when you have all those things, come into one, that's when you win championships, and that's when you compete at the highest level. So, and my biggest piece of advice is don't ever try to be anybody other than yourself. Understand that your skill sets and what you can bring to the table are different from others, and it can bring a lot more value than you really think. So it's a great sport, and it's one that everybody can be a part of, and one person can make a difference, but when you have a ton of them, that's when you win championships.
There we go. Listen, follow Jaxson on Twitter and Instagram at Jaxson with an X in it, Dart. As I do, you might even get a glimpse of his own Love Sack Sactionals monstrosity setup. It's amazing. Thank you so much to the all-time passing leader at Ole Miss. Yep, he broke Eli's record. The first rounder with fancy footwork, the crafty QB from Kaysville, just down the street from me, and Sactional savant, Mr. Jaxson Dart. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for having me.
And remember, success is a team sport. Use we when you're winning. Use I when it's tough. Own it. That's how you win, like Jaxson does, both on the field and off. This just may save you a chunk off your own 25-year journey. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Once a year to take my friends away should not be the budget for your bike across America.
TikTok has become an aggregator for some of the dumbest human actions.
When I won that million, I was $2 million in debt, barely hanging on.